My wife looked at me for 3 seconds after I said, "I know everything." Then she took a sip of her tea. That was it. No panic. No denial. No anger. Just a calm, almost tired expression that made my stomach drop harder than any confession could have. I remember standing in our kitchen with my hands shaking while she sat at the table like we were discussing grocery lists. For years I thought I knew this woman. We'd been married for 12 years. We had a daughter, a mortgage, 2 cars, and the kind of routine people complain about but secretly depend on. I was one of those husbands who believed stability meant safety. Nothing dramatic ever happened in our marriage. We argued about money occasionally. We forgot anniversaries sometimes. We got older. Normal problems. At least that's what I thought. Looking back now, I think the worst betrayals don't begin with lies. They begin with comfort. The certainty that the person sleeping beside you could never become a stranger. That certainty destroyed me. And the terrifying part is that when everything finally collapsed, my wife wasn't shocked. She looked relieved. Almost as if she'd been waiting for this moment for years. 3 years before that conversation, I would have described my marriage as boring in the best possible way. My wife, Emma, was organized, dependable, and quiet. I was more emotional, more impulsive. She balanced me. People always said we were perfect together because we never fought in public. Friends envied us. Family members used us as an example. What nobody saw was how distant Emma had slowly become. Not cold. Just unreachable. She stopped sharing small details about her day. She spent more evenings scrolling through her phone. When I asked what was wrong, she always smiled and said she was tired. I believed her. That's the thing that still embarrasses me. I believed everything. Around that time, Emma became unusually close to her childhood friend, Daniel. I knew him. He'd been around for years. He attended our wedding. He came to birthday parties. Our daughter called him Uncle Dan. So when Emma started texting him more often, I didn't think much about it. People are allowed to have friends. Besides, she never hid those conversations. At least not in the beginning. Trust makes you ignore things that would alarm anyone else. And I trusted her completely. The first red flag was so small that I almost forgot it happened. One night Emma fell asleep on the couch while watching television. Her phone lit up. I wasn't trying to snoop. I honestly wasn't. But the screen was facing me. The message preview read, "I miss you already." No name. Just the message. My chest tightened immediately. Then I convinced myself there had to be an innocent explanation. Maybe a friend. Maybe a relative. Maybe anything except what my brain instantly feared. The next morning I casually asked who had texted her so late. She laughed. Actually laughed. Then said it was Daniel discussing a business trip. I remember thinking that "I miss you already" was a strange thing for two friends to say. But Emma acted so naturally that I felt guilty for questioning her. So I apologized. She accepted the apology quickly. Too quickly. Over the next months, I noticed little things. She began locking her phone. She took calls outside. She smiled at messages she never shared. Whenever I asked questions, she made me feel paranoid. And eventually I started believing I was the problem. That was my biggest mistake. Suspicion is a strange thing. Once it enters your mind, every memory starts changing shape. Events that once seemed harmless begin looking sinister. I started noticing how often Daniel appeared in our lives. Birthday parties. School events. Weekend barbecues. He was everywhere. Sometimes he and Emma shared private jokes that stopped when I walked into the room. Other times I'd catch them exchanging glances that lasted slightly too long. Nothing concrete. Nothing undeniable. Just enough to make me uncomfortable. One evening I brought it up. Emma looked genuinely offended. "Daniel is family," she said. "You know that." I felt ashamed immediately. She knew exactly how to make me doubt myself. A week later she cried and asked if I trusted her. I told her yes. Because I wanted the answer to be yes. Looking back, I realized trust isn't supposed to require constant reassurance. If someone repeatedly asks whether you trust them, something is usually wrong. But at the time I was desperate to preserve the life we built. So I ignored my instincts. I ignored the growing anxiety. And I ignored the quiet voice telling me that something wasn't right. Everything changed because of a forgotten tablet. Such a stupid thing. Our daughter used it mostly for games. One afternoon she handed it to me because it wouldn't stop receiving notifications. Emma's messaging account was still connected. I wasn't searching for evidence. At least that's what I told myself. Then I saw Daniel's name. And I opened the conversation. I wish I hadn't. The messages went back years. Not months. Years. Hundreds of conversations. Photos. Inside jokes. Declarations of love. Plans. Regrets. Memories. My hands started trembling so violently I nearly dropped the device. The worst message wasn't sexual. It wasn't romantic. It was a sentence from Emma that said, "I hate lying to him, but I can't lose either of you." I must have read that line 20 times. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The room felt smaller. For 12 years I believed I was sharing my life with someone who chose me every day. Suddenly I realized I was part of an arrangement I never agreed to. And somehow that hurt more than the affair itself. I spent 2 days pretending nothing had happened. 2 miserable days. I barely slept. I barely ate. I kept rereading screenshots I'd sent to myself. Every message felt like another knife. There were conversations about vacations they'd taken together. Conversations about me. Conversations where they joked about how oblivious I was. That part nearly broke me. Being betrayed hurts. Being laughed at hurts differently. I started questioning my entire reality. Were family trips fake? Were anniversaries fake? Had every happy memory been built on a lie? By the second night I was sitting alone in my car outside a grocery store, crying like a child. I hadn't cried in years. Not when my father died. Not when I lost my job. But those messages shattered something fundamental inside me. The image I had of my marriage collapsed completely. And beneath the rubble was a terrifying question. How much of my life had actually been real? I didn't know the answer. I still don't. All I knew was that I couldn't keep pretending. Sooner or later, Emma would have to tell me the truth. The confrontation happened on a Thursday evening. I remember because it was raining. Our daughter was spending the night at a friend's house. The house felt unnaturally quiet. Emma walked into the kitchen carrying groceries. I looked at her and said, "I know everything." That's when she paused. 3 seconds. Then she took a sip of tea. No shock. No fear. Nothing. Finally she asked, "How much do you know?" That sentence destroyed me. Not, "What are you talking about?" Not, "You're wrong." Just, "How much do you know?" I told her about the messages. The tablet. The screenshots. Her shoulders dropped. Almost like someone had removed a heavy backpack. Then she whispered, "I was wondering when this would happen." I stared at her. I couldn't understand how calm she was. Meanwhile, my entire world was burning. I asked if she loved him. She nodded. I asked if she'd slept with him. Another nod. No hesitation. No excuses. Just honesty arriving years too late. And somehow that honesty felt crueler than any lie she'd ever told. Then came the revelation I never saw coming. I thought I already knew the worst. I was wrong. Emma started crying. For the first time that night, she looked genuinely frightened. She said there was something else. Something she'd hidden from everyone. My stomach dropped. I remember gripping the edge of the counter. Then she said, "Our daughter might be Daniel's." Everything went silent. I heard the refrigerator humming. Rain hitting the windows. My own heartbeat. Nothing else. I honestly thought I'd misheard her. I asked her to repeat it. She did. Word for word. According to Emma, the affair hadn't lasted months. It had lasted almost our entire marriage. There had been periods when she ended things. Periods when they reunited. And during one of those periods she became pregnant. With our daughter. Or maybe with our daughter. She wasn't sure. Those words shattered me. For years I had loved that little girl with every part of my heart. Suddenly biology entered the conversation. And I hated everyone in that room for making it matter. Especially myself. I wish I could say I handled it with dignity. I didn't. I screamed. I threw a chair. I punched a wall so hard I fractured 2 fingers. Years of trust exploded in minutes. Emma cried. I cried. At one point we were both shouting over each other. She kept saying she never meant to hurt me. I kept asking how 12 years of deception could possibly be accidental. There was no answer. Just tears. Eventually she admitted Daniel had wanted her to leave me multiple times. But she refused. Not because she loved me more. Because she couldn't bear the consequences. The house. The family. The reputation. The stability. I felt physically sick hearing that. I wasn't her husband. I was her safe option. Her backup plan. The man who paid bills and attended school meetings while she lived another life in secret. That realization wounded me more deeply than the affair itself. Because it meant our marriage wasn't destroyed in one moment. It had been hollow for years. I simply hadn't known it. The following weeks were chaos. DNA testing became unavoidable. Family members got involved. Secrets spread faster than I imagined. My mother blamed Emma. Emma's parents blamed me for investigating. Daniel suddenly wanted to talk. I refused. Then he appeared at our house anyway. That conversation still haunts me. He looked nervous. Guilty. Almost pathetic. But none of that mattered. I asked one question. How long? He answered. Almost 13 years. Longer than some marriages. Longer than entire relationships. I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because my brain couldn't process the number. 13 years. Thousands of lies. Thousands. When he tried apologizing, I told him to leave. The strange thing is that my anger toward him eventually faded. The anger toward Emma didn't. Because Daniel never promised me loyalty. She did. And despite everything, some part of me still loved her. That made every interaction feel unbearable. Love and hatred began occupying the same space inside me. The DNA results arrived 6 weeks later. I've never been more terrified opening an envelope. My hands were shaking. My chest hurt. I genuinely thought I might collapse. The results said I was the biological father. Relief hit me so hard I started sobbing. Not polite tears. Actual uncontrollable sobbing. For weeks I'd lived with the fear that someone could take away the identity I'd built around being her father. The test ended that fear. But it didn't heal anything. In fact, it created a new problem. Now I had proof that my daughter was mine. Yet my marriage remained shattered. I remember sitting alone afterward wondering why I didn't feel happier. The answer was simple. The DNA test resolved one question. It didn't erase 12 years of betrayal. My daughter was still mine. My wife was still a stranger. And I was still trying to understand how both things could be true at the same time. Some wounds survive even after the uncertainty ends. Emma wanted counseling. She wanted another chance. She said she loved me. Maybe she did. Human emotions are complicated enough that I no longer claim to understand them. For several months I tried. I really did. We attended therapy. We had difficult conversations. She answered questions I'd carried for years. Some days I thought reconciliation was possible. Other days I couldn't stand hearing her voice. The problem wasn't the affair anymore. It was the timeline. A one-time mistake is easier to understand. 13 years requires thousands of choices. Thousands of opportunities to stop. Thousands of opportunities to tell the truth. That reality poisoned every attempt at rebuilding trust. I'd look at her and wonder which version of her was real. The wife sitting beside me. Or the woman sending secret messages at midnight. Eventually I realized I was exhausted. Not angry. Not vengeful. Just exhausted. Living inside permanent suspicion is its own kind of prison. And I no longer wanted to be a prisoner. We separated a year after the confrontation. The divorce itself was surprisingly calm. Almost anticlimactic. Maybe because all the dramatic moments had already happened. Maybe because we were both emotionally drained. Our daughter struggled the most. Explaining adult betrayal to a child is impossible. You simplify. You soften. You protect them from details they should never carry. Even now she doesn't know everything. I hope she never does. Emma moved into an apartment across town. We learned how to co-parent. Birthdays became awkward. Holidays became negotiations. Nothing exploded. Nothing healed either. People assume separation brings closure. It doesn't. Sometimes it simply creates distance from the source of the pain. For a long time I expected to wake up feeling free. Instead I woke up feeling empty. The marriage had defined so much of my adult life that losing it felt like losing part of my identity. I wasn't just grieving Emma. I was grieving the future I thought we'd have. The future that never actually existed. 3 years have passed since everything came out. From the outside, my life looks normal again. I work. I see friends. I spend time with my daughter. I even dated someone briefly. But betrayal leaves strange scars. Sometimes they're invisible until the most ordinary moment triggers them. A delayed text. A locked phone. A vague explanation. Suddenly I'm back in that kitchen. Back in that conversation. Back in the moment my wife calmly asked how much I knew. What still bothers me isn't the affair itself. It's the certainty she carried. The confidence that she could manage both lives forever. I wonder how many times she looked at me and expected the truth to remain buried. I wonder whether she ever intended to tell me. And I wonder whether I would have discovered anything if that tablet hadn't been connected. Those questions don't have answers. So they linger. Quietly. Patiently. Like ghosts that never quite leave the house. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that betrayal rarely arrives as a dramatic event. Usually it arrives slowly. In tiny moments you explain away because love makes you generous. Love encourages optimism. Trust encourages blindness. Neither is inherently bad. But together they can be dangerous. I still think about Emma sometimes. Not with longing. Not even with anger. Mostly with sadness. We built a life together. A real life. Even if parts of it were based on lies. And that's what makes everything so complicated. People want villains and victims. Reality is messier. She hurt me deeply. I survived. Both statements are true. What I struggle with most is remembering the man I was before that kitchen conversation. The version of me who believed certainty existed. Who believed trust, once earned, was permanent. That person is gone. Maybe that's unavoidable. Maybe that's the hidden cost of betrayal. Not losing someone else. Losing the way you used to see the world. And honestly, that's the part that still hurts the most.